Hello everyone, this is ANURADHA Sharma and you're watching my channel IELTS with ANURADHA.
You will hear a number of different recordings and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. Write all your answers in the listening question booklet. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1. Section 1. You will hear a woman telephoning a travel agent to book a holiday. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully to the first part of the conversation and answer questions 1 to 7.
Hello, you're through to Go Travel. This is Darren speaking. How may I help you today?
Hello, I'm calling to book a holiday.
Great. May I take your name, please?
Yes, it's Greaves, Anna Greaves.
Is that G-R-E...
No, G-R-I-E-V-E-S. And Anna is with double N.
Right. Thank you, Anna. Now, we're delighted you've called us. Can I ask where you heard about us?
It was your advertisement in one of the magazines.
Was it Holiday World?
Oh, yes, that's the one.
Good, thank you. It's useful to know.
Of course.
And did you have a particular holiday in mind, or was it a general inquiry?
I think I've chosen. I like the look of the one with the code FT4551. The right destination and the prices seem reasonable.
Right. Now, was it for yourself only, or...?
Oh no, I want to go with a couple of friends, so there'd be 3 of us going.
OK. Now, there's a choice of dates, as you know.
Yes, I think, well, we've got to be back by the end of August, so if we say going on August the 16th, that would work fine.
No problem. And you can also choose the length of your holiday. There's, let's see, 7, 11 or 14 nights.
We thought the middle one would be great. Longer would be nice, of course, but...
Maybe next year.
Yes.
And you do need to have insurance.
Uh-huh.
With 3 levels, Standard, Super and Super Plus.
Standard seems a bit basic. Let's say Super. That should be sufficient.
Fine.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
Well, that's all good so far, and the availability's OK. Have you looked through the list of options? They're in the advertisement.
I have, and I've got the list here. Some of them do seem a good idea.
Which ones would you like to take?
In terms of the hotel, the offer of picnic lunches, we'd leave that. We'd rather go to cafes. I think a balcony for the room is a must. It's so nice to sit out, enjoying the view.
Oh, yes.
And then the trips. I think we'll pass on the night bus one. I never really enjoy the commentaries. And museums aren't really my sort of thing, to be honest. any more than dances.
Uh-huh.
But I like practical things, so I think the demonstration of local arts could be fun.
Yes, I would think so.
And then in terms of getting out of town, going up the river on a boat sounds delightful, and I wouldn't want to miss that. But the mountains, well, sitting in a coach on those winding roads.
I understand. OK, well, that's all I need for the booking at this point. Just a few details for you, and then we'll check the payment.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 2. You will hear a man giving some information about transport in London. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 11 to 15.
Hello, can I help you?
Oh, yes. I was wondering what the best way was for me to get around London.
Well, there are a lot of possibilities. As you probably realise, the main ways to get around are bus, train and tube.
Oh?
The Underground.
Oh.
It depends how much you want to spend. All forms of transport offer special tickets, such as cheap day returns on the trains and so on. Overall, you'll spend less on the bus, as it operates on a basic flat fare for each journey. But of course it may not go to where you need to travel to. The mainline trains only operate in the outlying areas, though a few cross London, whereas the tube has stations which are placed in central areas of the city, close to the main sites and shops. Obviously there are more bus stops, but you will probably have to change buses to get where you want, which can be inconvenient. You will find that the buses are mainly in the central areas, but some tube lines go quite a long way out of London, so you could use this for longer journeys. Having said that, the tubes do get very crowded, so you should use the train if you want to sit down. It does depend where you're travelling to.
Well, I'm living on the outskirts, but I have to travel into London to college every day, and then around London when I'm here.
OK, so time is going to be an issue for you. The tube should be fast crossing London, but quite honestly, there are so many delays that it's not very efficient. Again, the train has fewer stops, so is probably your quickest option to get to and from college. Of course, which service you use might depend on how frequent it is. I mean, the trains might only be every 20 minutes or whatever, but a timetable is published to save you hanging around. There are a lot of tube trains at busy times of day, but fewer at other times, whereas the buses run every 5 minutes through most of the day, and there are night buses. But you'll need to check out your route first.
You now have 30 seconds to read questions 16 to 20.
OK, thanks. How can I get from here to Hackney then?
Right, well, you can choose. We're here at the information office, OK? Now, next to us, on the corner of the High Street and Sweet Street, is the bus stop, opposite the bank.
Uh-huh.
The bus goes all the way to Hackney, but it is a very indirect route, so it could take ages.
Oh.
If you want to take the train, walk down the High Street towards the city, go past the bank, and on your left is the station, just before you get to the post office. There's a mainline service to Hackney Wick, so if you need to get into the centre of Hackney, you may need to pick up a bus when you get there. Opposite the post office, on the corner of Hart Lane, is the tube entrance. You'll see the big signs. That's probably the best way to get there, though you may have to change. It's probably best if you go and get a travel card first. To get to the ticket office, you go out of here onto the High Street. Then turn into South Street, and the ticket office is on your right opposite the cinema. Of course, you may decide it's quicker to take a taxi. But it's a long way, so I think it'll be very expensive. If you do want to get a cab, then the rank is outside here, just opposite the office.
Now turn to Section 3. Section 3. You will hear a conversation between two students discussing an assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi, Opal. Any ideas about what we should do for our geography project?
Hi, Perry. Yes, I'd like to do something on wetlands.
I think that's a great idea. Where do we start?
With a definition, of course. Something like a marshy area of land where the soil near the surface is saturated or covered with water, forming a special habitat for wildlife.
And we could add, the flora and fauna of the area are reliant on the waterlogged soil for their survival.
Yes, that's a major problem, actually. When commercial developers or farmers come along and decide to drain the swamps, everything dies. The practice is all too common, unfortunately. Did you know that as a result, wetlands are recognized internationally as one of the most threatened types of habitat?
That's right. We'll have to be sure to discuss their importance in our assignment.
But first, I think we should state some of the particular characteristics of wetlands.
Well, there are 3 that I can think of. To start with, wetlands are limited areas of open water, which vary depending on seasonal fluctuations.
Yes, and the second could be that there's usually a variety of water-tolerant flora on the banks and throughout the water.
Of course, depending on the time of year, there may be more or less water, but levels generally remain quite shallow.
Okay, now let's move on to the importance of wetlands.
Shall we start with plant and wildlife habitat?
Yes, I think we should point out that wetlands are homes for countless species of water birds, frogs, invertebrates, and fish.
and they support many varieties of water-loving plants.
Which brings us naturally to the topic of biodiversity. Even small wetlands act as borders between land and permanent water. They turn into refuge areas or sanctuaries in times of drought, and they often support rare and threatened plants and animals found nowhere else.
Exactly. And they're especially important as nurseries and breeding grounds for all kinds of fish, birds, and invertebrates.
Wetlands are important for improving the purity of the water, too.
Yes, that's because the flow of water through the wetlands is slowed by bank and in-stream plants, and so it allows sediment to settle. Nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus and other pollutants are removed as the water passes through.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Okay, at this point, I think we should look at mangroves. They're important for nutrient removal.
I think nutrient recycling is more accurate, and biological productivity, because wetlands are really very productive ecosystems.
Should we do a food web then?
We should do a diagram of some sort showing the importance of mangrove trees, but maybe not a food chain.
How about you explain it while I try and sketch it?
Right. Well, let's start with the mangrove trees. They're very special because of their aerial roots that allow them to breathe even when the tide is high and their roots are underwater. They can live in salt water, and the salt enters through the roots, travels up to the older leaves, and then these die and drop back into the water. A unique feature of mangroves is their ability to develop leaves on their seeds while they're still on the tree, and the seedlings drop down, planting themselves directly into the mud underneath.
Got that. What happens to those older leaves that fall?
The fallen leaves, or litter, decay in the water and form a rich mud that feeds bacteria, worms, and small crustaceans.
You mean things like prawns and crabs feed on the decomposed leaf?
Yes, and even little fish do as well.
And bigger fish feed on them?
Eventually, the remaining organic matter, which is now just very tiny particles, is taken up through the root system, providing nourishment for the mangrove trees.
And the cycle begins all over again.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's what we'll call it, the nutrient cycle of mangrove litter.
Great. I'll go home and work on this, and we'll meet again tomorrow.
Okay, see you then.
That is the end of Section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 4. Section 4. You will hear part of a talk about motivation. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully to the talk and answer questions 31 to 40.
OK, everyone. Let's make a start with the second module of our business management course. And we're thinking about motivation. Yes, motivation. The drive to achieve and to get things done. Now, what motivates you to get up in the morning? A strong desire to get that assignment finished? Or maybe you want to get more training in before the week's inter-university football match. Let's focus on motivation in the workplace. Why is it so important for workers to be motivated? Think about it. If you feel motivated, you're far more likely to feel loyal to your employer and take a real pride in getting the job done. So how can a company motivate its workers to work well? Well, let's have a look at this. It's called the motivational pyramid, and it was developed by a man called Abraham Maslow. He called it the hierarchy of needs. He argued that people are motivated by 5 essential needs, and he formed this pyramid here to illustrate each of them. And you can see the 5 tiers or levels on the pyramid. Maslow said that workers are motivated at these 5 levels of need, so let's look at each of them in turn. OK now, so let's start at the bottom of the pyramid, just here. Now these are the basic physical needs. These are the needs that motivate us to survive and have food and shelter. So we're motivated to work in return for money so that we can actually eat and keep warm. But even at this basic level, we're not just motivated by money alone. We're also motivated to work if we've got good facilities in the workplace. What kind of facilities are we talking? Well, these facilities could be a staff restaurant to have our lunch in, or a locker to put our personal belongings in. Now, after we've got these things, we're then motivated to move up to the second level of need on the pyramid. And here, on the second tier, we can see security needs. We're motivated to work hard when we feel safe and secure. Well, we're much more likely to work well if we've got a formal job contract. It makes us feel safe, doesn't it? And what about a pension when we're old and no longer able to work? And we're also much more likely to feel safe and secure if we know there is a sick pay scheme we can fall back on if we're ill and have to take time away from work. OK, so here we are at the third tier. Yes, just here. Social needs. Now, social needs refer to the need people have to belong or to be part of a group. Teamwork's a very important motivator. What does this mean in practice? Well, it might mean encouraging workers to get together to discuss various issues within the organisation. For example, pay increases. Then we move on to the next tier, the fourth one here, self-esteem. This means the kind of motivation that encourages us to experience a real sense of achievement. So how can a company make this happen? Well, they can use a system of rewards. Giving rewards to individual workers as a way of saying thank you and celebrating their achievements. What kind of rewards are we talking about? Well, examples of these include free gym membership or gifts such as contract-free phones. This kind of recognition can make us feel valued, and as a result we feel more motivated to move up to the final level of the pyramid. On the final tier, we've got self-fulfillment. Now this is the motivation that inspires us to be creative and feel challenged in the workplace. So what does this mean in practice? Well, it means making sure that workers have the opportunity to do the training they need and at the same time provide them with a personal development plan to help them reach their true potential. Personal development plans
can help workers make progress and achieve higher goals. So, there we have it, the hierarchy of needs. Achieving each of these tiers, one level at a time, and moving up the pyramid motivates us to achieve the next. Now, does anyone have any questions before we move on?
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more videos.